What's going on, you guys? Paul here with Paul's Performance, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be hopefully finishing up the manual swap on Samuel's Mark IV Jetta. This will be the third final video of our three-part series of doing this manual swap. In this video, we will be covering the final touch-ups, which will include all of the wiring and the little bit of programming that you're going to have to do to swap it over from the automatic to the manual as far as the ECU goes. This car is also tuned, so we'll have to get it retuned also, but we probably won't cover that in this video very much because that's kind of separate. We'll just cover the ECU reprogramming because, like I said, some of you guys just probably leaving it stock. This is going to be a harder video to show step by step because some of this wiring is in place that, to be honest, I can't even get into, so it's going to be a lot harder to video every single part of it. I'm going to try my best to explain what I'm doing either before or after I do it and try to give y'all at least a glance of the area I'm working in. And also I'm going to put the link in the description for the schematics that I found. Like I said, there's a lot of good information about doing these swaps, and the particular wiring diagrams that I found a nice one that's really step by step. Somebody's already wrote out everything you need to rewire on the car, so I'm gonna leave that in the description. That way you guys can follow it step by step, because that's exactly what I'm gonna be doing. This is my first manual swap, so I have to read the schematics just like you guys. So anyways, we're gonna get inside the car. I'm gonna start inside the car and just kind of go down the list of the link that I have in the description until we're finished. So let's get inside the car and let's get started. I'm down here, I'm on the ground, and I have our interior panel removed here, and then there's a metal panel that was underneath that. I went ahead and removed that. That way I had full access to this relay block here. You guys can look, you can see these relays, and they have numbers on the top. The one that we're gonna be working on is gonna be in the automatic car, is the 175. This relay we'll have to swap out with a 53 relay. So if you don't have one, you'll need to order one. We took the one out of the manual car because it was already there. What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna go ahead and unplug this 175, and then I'm gonna take me a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver or a pick, and I'm gonna get this socket popped out of this block and get it brought down to where I can have some work. So I'm gonna do that right quick and then we'll be right back. First thing we're doing based on this wiring is we're gonna start with cruise control hookup. So first thing it's got is we're gonna be cutting this black with green stripe wire. We're gonna cut it close to the connector as we can get it, because that one will not be used. We're gonna connect it to one of these ends. It doesn't matter. It's gonna be this lower switch here is the one that this is going to. It's either gonna be black. It says they're black or blue. Mine's black. We're gonna go ahead and connect this green and black one to one of these wires coming off of that pigtail we have here, and then we'll be right back. We got one side of the blue or black clutch switch hooked up to our black and green here. I have my heat shrink. I haven't done that yet. And now I'm gonna take the other wire on that switch and we're gonna hook it up to the other wire, which is gonna be pin 9. On this car, it is yellow and blue. So we're gonna go ahead and snip that close to it where we have enough slack. And then we're gonna connect this yellow and blue wire to the other side of that clutch switch. And then that will be it for this clutch switch, and we'll move on to the next step. Now we are under the hood, continuing on our cruise control wiring. Come to find a little problem with this particular car is it looks like they had it pin 3 and pin 9 on the 175 relay plug was reversed, because you're supposed to be able to come out here to your TCM and unplug it, and pin number 11 should have continuity and be the same color as pin number 9 on that 175 relay plug according to the schematics, and it was a different color. It was actually red with a gray stripe, and I checked the one in there and the red with gray stripe was on pin 3. I come back out here and I noticed that the TCM did not have the yellow with blue stripe wire in the TCM at all. So I continuity checked that red wire to, I don't know if you guys can hear my multimeter beeping, but pin number 11 is red with gray stripe, and it's got continuity to the red and with gray stripe connector that is inside that was in pin number 3. So I believe they had it reversed, which Samuel said that his cruise control did not work. So I'm assuming that some master tech has been involved inside the dash or somewhere and has reversed the wiring when they put it back together. Or it could have been wrong from the factory, but I feel like the original owner would have said something unless they just never used cruise control, which is possible. But I think we got it fixed up now. Now what we're gonna do, now that we have the correct wire out here, we have the TCM unplugged, we're gonna get the TCM removed, and then we're gonna cut this red wire with the gray stripe that's going in there to our switch. We're gonna cut that. And then we're gonna have to find a wire that goes over to the ECU. So I'm gonna get this cut and then we'll be right back. The TCM unplugged and we have our ECU connector unplugged. And so what we're doing now is we have our clutch switch inside. We had it wired in to our red with gray stripe connector, which should come out to your TCM at pin number 11. And we continuity check that, and we also have the red with gray stripe wire coming here. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna cut that at the TCM, and we're gonna have that over here. And so then what we're gonna do is we gotta find a circuit that goes from the TCM over to the ECU. And what that's gonna be is a yellow with red stripe. So I found a yellow with red stripe wire and I put my connector in, and it should come over to pin 19 on your ECU connector, your bigger ECU connector. I come over to there, continuity checked, and if you guys can listen, we have continuity between that, and we also have the same color, the yellow with red stripe. And so I have the connector disassembled now, and I have this pin pulled out. The reason being is we're gonna have to pull that one out of pin 19, and we're gonna have to move it to pin 66, which will be on this bottom side, and it should be empty. We're gonna move that over to pin 66 on the ECU, and then we're going to cut this yellow wire at the TCM, and we're going to connect it to this red with gray striped wire. That way the connection goes from the switch, comes all the way up to here through this red and gray wire, connects to our yellow with red stripe wire, which goes over to the ECU for the cruise control. So we're going to connect these two, and then we're going to come over here and I'm going to move this pin over to this connector. Now for this connector here, I know I've already got it disassembled. It's not the easiest connector to disassemble. It's not the hardest either. I will show you guys once I get this pin installed how to remove the pins and how it goes together. That way you have an idea. But just remember, I'll try to put a link for the diagram of this connector because it does not have numbers on the connector. So you don't just want to count them, you want to make sure. So I'll leave a picture of the diagram that I used. And like I said, just make sure that you read it correctly. This can be tricky because sometimes you'll get a schematic of these connectors of where the pins are, and it'll be the ECU side. So you'll have to flip it on the connector side. So the one I'm using is an ECU side diagram, so you'll just have to flip it to read this connector. We got our pin moved into slot 66 on our ECU, and as you can see, I do have some heat shrink here, and the reason being is the wire that was on this one was very tight when I went to move it to 66, and I didn't want it to have the chance of pulling out, so I cut off some extra wiring to give it a little bit more slack to go to pin 66. That way I wouldn't have to worry about it pulling out, you know, once it's installed. So make sure you drop your pin tool. I got that in, and then I have our wire connected over there for our clutch switch for our cruise. Right now what I'm going to show you guys is how this connector comes together. I figured I'd show you how it works. So you're going to have a lock. These are all your locks up here, and if you look closely you'll see the tab. What you'll want to do is take your pen tool or a needle, and you'll want to push that tab inward. Once you push that tab inward, you should be able to pull your wire and pull your pin out of that assembly, and just make sure that that little tab is pushed back out. So if it is bent in, just take it and bend it back out. But that's how the pin comes out. It's kind of hard to show you as small as it is, but hopefully my explanation helps. If not, there may be some more videos going deeper. So this connector pulls out in these two assemblies and with the seal. So I'm going to go ahead and slide these back in. They come out just the same as they go in here. So slid back in there and seated. And so once you have that in there, you have this lock assembly that's going to come in from this side here. And this is going to hold these two assemblies in. So we're going to slide that back in. We also had this this little lock that was on this side for these larger pins, which I did not remove. So we'll slide that back in, and then this goes on the back side here, and it just kind of splits these two assemblies. That's just kind of holding these rubbers in. Like I said, in order to remove it though, you'll slide this out. It just pulls out. Just remove this. You'll pop this out. It slides out the back, and then you can pull these two assemblies out, and then you'll be able to get to the pins. And then this is it back assembled. You'll also have your cap that goes on the back side. Just cut your zip tie and it just pops right off. We got that done, so now we're gonna move on to the next step of wiring. We're gonna finish up our wiring in here. I'm gonna kind of skip a few steps on this PDF just to go ahead and get everything hopefully connected up in here, and then I'll go out and finish it on the transmission. But I'll go ahead and go over what all we're gonna do. The first thing I'll start with is the only thing I've done since has been to cut our number 4 pin, which is a black with blue stripe. So we're cutting it, and we cut it back to give us some slack, to give us something to work with on this pin, because this pin will be used. So you don't want to cut it up close to the connector. So we cut it back and gave it about 2 inches, and we took the other end of this black and blue wire, and we connected it to this yellow and blue wire here, which should go to pin 8 on the 8-pin transmission connector that's under the hood. So you'll want to verify that, do a continuity check to make sure that that goes to that pin 8 on that connector. And so then what we did is we come to pin 7 on this connector, and we cut it up close to the connector. And this is a brown wire, so we have this wire here, and we're going to connect that brown wire to one of our wires on our white upper clutch switch. And then we're going to take this number 4 and we're going to connect it to the other side of the clutch switch, and then that should be it for everything on the inside. The only other thing we'll have to do is, instead of putting back our 175 relay here, we're just going to be putting back our 4-pin 53 relay back into this socket place. So that's all we're going to do. So I'm going to get this hooked up right here, and then we'll be back to kind of show you. We got our wiring cleaned up, heat shrunk, we taped it up, and we have our plug socket back in its place. I suggest marking which one it come in, because they do have little grooves to where they'll only go into one spot, so just remember where they pop in. And originally we had our 175, this big one that has all these leads, and on this one all we need is our 53 relay, which only has 4 pins. It's your basic relay. We're going to plug that in, and then we should be done with all the wiring on the inside here. So we're just going to plug that into that place. We should be done in here. So now we just got to go finish the wiring on the transmission, and hopefully our wiring will be complete and ready with no issues. We're here in the home stretch for our wiring. What we're going to do is now we're going to work with all the transmission stuff that's on top of the trans. First things first is the starter connector, the exact same on car to car, so you just plug that one in. Nothing else we need to do there. Plug that connector in. There's also a connector back here that goes to the back side of the transmission. It is also identical from automatic to manual, so just go ahead and plug that one in. The only connector that you're going to have to mess with on the transmission is going to be this one right here, which is going to have you're going to have to cut your pigtail or get a pigtail for this sensor, and this is the only one we're going to have to mess with wiring on. What we're going to do is you're going to find your automatic transmission connector, and this is going to be for reverse lights. We got our 8-pin connector here, and we already have our blue and yellow wire cut. This is the one we did continuity from the inside. This wire is going to go, and we're going to connect it to one side of this sensor. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find the black and green wire, which we have right here, and we're going to cut that, and we're going to put that to the other wire on this sensor. And then we should be done with wiring. Then you can just kind of clean up everything, put everything back together. I suggest you wait until you crank the car up before you put everything back together for wiring, just in case you miss something or something's not right. Always test your stuff first. When you're going throughout this process and you read, check for continuity and make sure your ECU connectors are going to the right slots. Double check, triple check, because you do not want to fry your ECU. We're gonna hook these two wires up, and then we're gonna have to pull up VCDS, and we're gonna have to swap the car from an auto to a manual in VCDS. We're gonna test start and see if the car runs. And if so, then we're in good shape and we can start putting everything, cleaning all the wiring up, put everything back like it's supposed to, and hopefully take it for a test drive here soon. So I'm gonna connect these two wires up, and then I'm gonna go grab the computer and we'll work on getting the ECU reprogrammed to a manual trans. So I'll be right back. Alrighty guys, so I had a little bit of confusion when I was doing the ECU wiring between that and the 175 plug. The particular schematics I was looking at first was telling me that the blue and yet with the yellow stripe wire would come up and should go to the pin 11 on the TCM. I didn't have that. I had a red with gray stripe wire, which also went to the 175. I thought something was a little off, so I did some more research on it, and I found a different set of schematics. And they say, on these cars that sometimes the wire colors can change. They'll move stuff around, so it looks like this one's a little different. The main thing that you need is to have one of those wires that comes from, that 175 comes up to the ECU. So on this particular car, the blue with yellow stripe has a wire that comes up to the ECU, goes to a different pin though, not pin 11. And it also tees off and comes up to this connector that's right here going into the transmission, the 8 pin. So I use that wire for the wiring at the transmission, and I use the red with gray stripe to do the wiring for the loop that goes to pin 66 on the ECU. I'll make sure to attach the second set of schematics that I did. Like I said, the main thing is that you have continuity between the wire that you're messing with on the inside and the wire that you find here at the TCM. And then the same way with when you're doing the wiring on top of the transmission at the 8-pin connector, you want to make sure that you have the correct wire that has continuity from that 8-pin to the inside where your 175 is. That way it works properly, because the wiring that you're using to go from the 175 to the TCM and the 175 to the 8-pin, like I said, it just needs to be a wire that's already going between it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact color that I'm saying on this car, because they may change something apparently. Volkswagen may have put a different color in. But yeah, you need to just make sure that it has continuity, so keep your multimeter out because you don't want to fry anything. So we got that squared away. I'm gonna put the battery in. We're gonna turn the key on, see if we light any fires, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the VCDS tuning to swap the ECU over from a automatic to a manual, and then I'm gonna see if it wants to start. And we have VCDS pulled up. As you can see, the dash is panicking because it has no idea what is going on. We're gonna see if we can get this reprogrammed. As you guys can see, we have quadruple 01, which means it's automatic. We're gonna have to change that to quadruple 02. So what we're gonna do, go to engine, and then you'll get to this screen for engine. You'll see that code. We're gonna go to coding. Once you hover over this, it's gonna tell you the codes. And we're gonna do the quadruple 02 manual transmission for front wheel drive with crash shut off. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Then we're gonna hit do it. And as you can see, our number has changed to quadruples 2. And now I'm gonna cycle the key off and then back on. And now we're gonna do fault codes, see what kind of fault codes we got. I'm sure we're gonna have a few. I have some stuff still disconnected. Oh, no faults. I have no coolant in here, so car is ultra panic. Most of those lights will not come off until you start the car. That is excellent. Let me click back on engine one more time. Let it connect. stays 002. So that should be it for programming. We have codes, intake manifold, EGR valve. These are stuff that is unplugged, so we won't worry about that, but we don't have any transmission codes, and our soft coding has swapped to a manual. So now we should be good to start. So we're gonna see what happens once we get some stuff hooked up. All right, guys, so we got our coding out of the way. I believe, like I said, if you don't have VCDS, I don't know of another way to be able to change that coding. Sure, there may be other scanners. I'm not sure. Like I said, this is my first manual swap. And I have VCDS for working on these cars, so that's all I've used. So you're probably gonna have to get it, or if your buddy or somebody has one, and they can probably code it for you. Or like I said, if you have a donor car and you're not too worried about swapping the ECUs, I'm sure you can bring the ECU over, but I'm actually not certain of whether or not it may bring the mileage from the other car. I'm not sure if that's stored in the cluster or not on these. I know on Ford's Power Strokes, it follows the cluster, but it would affect your mileage as far as like what's on the dash. I'm not certain of that though, but I guess technically you could swap the ECUs if you have a donor car and the manual car. So, but anyways, that's how you swap it. So before we put everything back together and clean everything up, tidy up all my wiring, I'm gonna make sure the car actually starts, maybe moves forward and backwards. And if so, then we've had a successful manual swap on our first try. Like I said, it's my first time doing one on a Volkswagen. So let's see if we're successful and we can get Samuel back on the road. So I'm gonna hop in here. Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers. Like that. Cross your fingers. Success! So guys, it looks like we have successfully wired it up and programmed it correctly, because she's alive again. She went forward, she went backwards, so everything seems to be in working shape. Once we get everything back together, we'll be able to take it down the road and see how she does, make sure all my ABS lights and everything goes out. Hopefully all is well, but that's about it for the swap. We're gonna tidy everything back up, put all the center console stuff, clean up my wiring a little bit. Like I said, for your TCM connector, it's many different ways you could mess with that. I'm probably gonna seal it up. I'm not sure how. Wrap it up with tape, maybe put like a bag over it, wrap that up with tape, put some big heat shrink over it. That way all those wires stay, out of the, wetness in the rain. TCM, I'll take that out and we might sell it, so if anybody wants it, just let me know. We're just gonna clean up, finish. We're gonna wait on our Malone tuning to come in so they can get it swapped over from automatic stage 1 to the manual. And like I said, then we're done. So that concludes our manual swap. It seems to be a success. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions about this swap, anything that we did, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down in the comment section. I will try my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Like I said, this was my first swap, so I'm not an expert. Any of you guys who are experts on this swap, if you have any information that you can pass on to me, I would greatly appreciate it, as well as I'm sure that anybody who's doing this would love to hear about it. This is my first time, so forgive me on some of the wiring stuff. This wiring's a little different than what I'm used to, especially with them saying that the colors change from car to car sometimes. So a little finicky. As always, like I said, leave comments. Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys watching. As always, like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.